can view the presentation later. So thank you for that introduction, Jeff, and good evening. My name is Dr. Rachel Sitz, and my colleague Tina McKeon, a board-certified master arborist and principal consultant, is also here representing Davie Resource Group. We're pleased to be with you during this community meeting and appreciate you taking the time to engage with us in the development of your urban forestry management plan.
And Rachel, if I may, just real quick. So tonight we put a flyer on the table in the back there. If you're welcome to take it and look at it. In addition, we will be, like Rachel said, we'll be recording this meeting, and this will be going up on our website. For those that couldn't attend the meeting, they'll be able to see this recording as well. The flow of the meeting tonight, so we'll start with the presentation with Davie Resource Group and myself. And then we'll move into a question and answer when we're done with the presentation. So if anybody has any questions, we'll ask them to come up to the podium and ask those questions. And that can be asked either of staff or of Davie Resource Group, Tina and Rachel. And then following that, we'll stop the recording, and then we'll move on to a quick exercise and kind of an open house if anybody wants to chat or has any additional questions. So with that, I'll turn it back over to RCD to go ahead to DRG to start the presentation. And then just a last note, another partner and one key partner in this project is RCD, our Napa Resource Conservation District, and we do have a few members in the audience tonight as well.
Great. So Jeff gave a good overview of kind of what the evening is going to look like. And now I'm going to give you an overview of what the presentation will entail. First, we'll begin with an introduction to what the urban forest is and why a management plan is important. We will share details about the community tree resource, including species, condition, and benefits. We'll give an overview of the current urban forestry programming, provide a summary of the distribution of trees and tree canopy, and then we'll have that question and answer session, and additional feedback and conversations can happen during that open house portion. We will start with some terminology and more information on plan development. So what is the urban forest? It's the collection of trees and woody shrubs that grow within Napa. This includes both public trees, like park trees, street trees, or trees at city facilities, and trees on private property, like the trees in your backyard or in retail areas. All of these trees are part of the larger urban forest. And tree canopy is defined as the layer of leaves when viewed from above. The Urban Forestry Management Plan is a city document that will summarize the current tree inventory data, tree canopy data, and current practices and services the city provides around the urban forest. The data gathered on the existing conditions will help define what is needed to manage the urban forest in the future. In addition, there will be a number of opportunities for community members, community organizations, and those involved in managing the urban forest to identify priorities and direction for the future urban forests. Conversations like the ones that we will have tonight will help create a shared vision for the care, preservation, and enhancement of the urban forest over the planning horizon of 40 years. Now I'm going to hand the presentation back to Jeff so that he can give some background on how we got to where we are today.
Thanks, Rachel. So an urban forestry management plan was something that was the interest of this community and our commission when I started here with the city in 2019. Unfortunately, the city didn't have the funding to support a project such as this. And so we looked to alternative funding such as the CAL FIRE Community and Urban Forestry Grant that is available. And in 2021, we submitted an application for that grant in the summer of 2021, and we were the successful recipients of that grant to fund a project of above $500,000 to do the work that Davie Resource Group will describe here in this project. Once we were awarded that grant, we then went to an RFP process to select a consultant to support us with this work. And Davie Resource Group, among others, sent in applications, and we ultimately selected them because they had a tremendous amount of experience doing these type of projects, particularly in the California area. And that brought us roughly to early 23, where we had a kickoff project and really started this in earnest. And then as far as the timeline goes, tonight is the first community kickoff meeting that we are having. We are looking for input from you and the community, hence why we have a survey going out. So that will be going out, that will be available starting tonight and will be available throughout the summer to try to gain more information. Additionally, we'll do a few exercises tonight to try to get some more information from you all to try to steer future community meetings. Tentatively, we have 2 additional community meetings planned late summer and fall, as well as working with our city as one of our partners to plan some planting events. Once we wrap up the survey portion of the project, we'll really move into the plan development. And currently we anticipate that we will have the plan completed sometime in mid-2025. And with that, I'll hand it back to Rachel.
Thanks, Jeff. The development of your urban forestry management plan with DRG involved occurred back in January. That's when we had our kickoff. Since kickoff, DRG has inventoried community trees, and Canopy was mapped using high-resolution aerial imagery. DRG will complete a review of the master street tree list. We have started reviewing city policies, including the city's tree ordinances. Some interviews were conducted with city departments and other groups that have a role in the care and preservation of the urban forest. Discussions with city staff about current operations are ongoing. And at this point in the process, we're starting community engagement, beginning with tonight's presentation. Community engagement is a collaboration between the City of Napa, NRCD, and DRG. The online survey opens today, just like Jeff said, and it's meant to capture community-wide feedback on topics we feel are important for the planning process. Community engagement also includes an additional community meeting, pop-up events, workshops, and volunteer planting events that will provide educational opportunities and avenues for community participation and visioning. Once we've collected community feedback, we will draft the plan, and a final version of the plan is expected to be completed in the spring of 2025. An urban forestry management plan is an important tool for illustrating the value and benefit of community trees. The plan can communicate the existing challenges with the current urban forestry program and identify opportunities for growth. As a 40-year plan, the plan can help promote a shared vision for the urban forest of tomorrow and identify what resources need to be in place to support the community's goals. Both short and long-term goals with suggested timelines are intended to be adjusted depending on available resources and community needs. Urban forestry plans come in many forms, including various designs and formats. They're all comprehensive documents geared towards meeting the unique needs of the communities they were made for. We've included some QR codes here to a few of our previous plans or landing pages that allow you to access the plan for the City of Boulder, City of Davis, and Yuba City. They may help inform your expectations and prompt thoughts on your plan, but you'll see that each of these plans are tailored to the unique needs of the communities and are reflective of the local culture. Napa's plan will also be unique and address the specific challenges and opportunities that your urban forest is facing over the next 40 years. To better understand the community tree resource, which these trees are public trees along streets and medians, at parks and city facilities, we used the recently collected tree inventory of community trees in conjunction with iTree Eco to assess the composition and benefits those trees provide. 34,136 trees were collected in the public right-of-way. This excludes trees in open space parks, river corridors, and private property trees. 72.5% of the community tree inventory are street trees. Together, all of these trees are currently storing an estimated 13,209 tons of carbon and woody and foliar biomass. To replace all of these trees with trees of a similar size and species would cost $106 million. The inventory also identified 3,058 vacant planting sites, including 395 sites that require stump removal prior to tree planting. Napa's community tree resource includes 260 unique species. The top 3 most prevalent species are crepe myrtle, coast live oak, and Chinese pistache. Together, these 3 species represent 36.5% of the overall population. To promote resilience in the urban forest, there's a widely accepted rule that no single species should represent greater than 10% of the population. No genus should represent greater than 20% of the population, and no family should represent more than 40% of the population. For Napa, both crepe myrtle species and coast live oak exceed this rule at the species level. Diversity is important because having a large percentage of a single species can have grave consequences if something like climate change, drought, disease, or pests impact a specific species. For instance, if a pest that was specific to and caused mortality in coast live oak, the community could potentially lose around 10% of the overall benefits from the community tree resource. Napa's community tree resource has a close to ideal age distribution. The distribution of individual tree ages within a population has an impact on future costs and benefits. Older, mature trees typically require more inspections and have higher maintenance costs due to their size and because of the need for removal. With a significant portion of trees within the established age classes, which are trees between 12 and 24 inches in diameter, managers can better allocate annual maintenance costs uniformly over many years and ensure continuity in overall tree canopy coverage and the associated benefits. A higher proportion of young trees ensures that there's a steady stream of trees being established to offset the decline and eventual removal of older mature trees. 52.3% of Napa's community trees are less than 8 inches in diameter. Trees less than 8 inches in diameter are typically younger and newly planted. And 6.3% of Napa's community trees are more than 24 inches in diameter. And trees in this size class are well established and for some species are likely mature. Every year, Napa's community trees provide $184,176 in measurable benefits to the community. More than half of the annual benefits are attributed to the removal of pollutants from the air, resulting in fewer adverse health incidents related to air quality. Trees sequester carbon dioxide from the atmosphere, which results in $64,521 in benefits each year. The leaves, bark, and roots of trees have reduced stormwater runoff from rain events from entering stormwater management systems, resulting in a savings of $18,948 every year. We know that these trees are also saving energy through shading, blocking wind, and cooling through evapotranspiration, but the dollar value of these benefits cannot be measured using the established methodologies. In fact, research shows there are many benefits that trees provide that are not currently quantifiable. 93.5% of the overall population are in fair or better condition. Though subtle, younger trees are in general in better condition. You can see from the data here, around 94% of trees 12 inches or less are in fair or better condition, and 87.7% of trees greater than 24 inches in diameter are in fair or better condition. All the trees that are dead and some of the trees with other condition ratings are recommended for removal. As a result, about 2% of community trees are recommended for removal. About 10% of these trees are large statured trees with expansive canopies, and it's important to note that these removals will likely impact the amount of shade in that area. Now I'm going to hand the presentation back to Jeff to talk about the Parks and Urban Forestry Division's role in the care of community trees.
Thanks, Rachel. So a big portion of this project will be to look at the current maintenance levels that we provide and also try to look at how we can best care for the community's urban forest resource. So to start with that, this city has always put a big emphasis on its urban forestry. In fact, we are entering into our 34th year of being considered a Tree City USA. And what is required to be considered a Tree City USA is that we spend at least $2 per capita on trees, and that we also have ordinance that do provide protection for trees. So like I said before, this city is one of the longer standing cities at coming on 34 years. Another great attribute that this city has is that we do have a dedicated urban forestry division under the Parks Department. Right now, that is made up of relatively small, but still have a crew of 6 folks that are dedicated to maintaining trees in public spaces and along street corridors and medians. The majority of our tree maintenance right now is associated in a couple different categories. We spend a large portion of our time working with the Public Works Department on their streets and sidewalks rehab program. And we do a lot of pruning and removal and root shaving around those projects that are going through neighborhoods and replacing sidewalks and curbs and streets and whatnot. In addition to that, we spend a good portion of our time doing pruning, block pruning along corridors so that, we could provide clearance along those streets. In addition, we also maintain the trees around our facilities, such as this one. And then lastly, and what has taken up a good portion of our time over the last few years is really response to emergencies when we have wind events and we have trees down and things such as that. We are governed currently by a few different municipal codes. In fact, we have 2 municipal codes here at the city. One is 12.44 and the other is 12.45. And 12.44, and again, these are municipal codes that Davie Resource Group and us will take a look at. And through this process, we will review our codes and see if changes may need to be made. But 12.44 speaks to street trees. Those are trees located between the curb and the sidewalk. And this code gives the city jurisdiction over maintenance, replacement, planting, and removal of those trees. However, those trees are owned by the adjacent property owner. So trees between curb and sidewalk. And so when Rachel talked about the 34,000 trees that they inventory, those were speaking to those specific street trees. 12.45 is a municipal code that relates to protected native trees and trees on private property. So this code speaks to the protection of native trees of a certain species and size that are located on properties of an acre or more. And it also speaks to our significant tree program. And both of these codes are available on our city's website if anybody is obviously interested in looking in that. So on the next slide, I'll take a little bit of a deeper dive into kind of our operations. I did describe kind of overall how we perform the majority of our maintenance, but these are really the metrics here for the work that we do. And what we're showing here on this is a 3-year average of the annual maintenance that those 6 staff members perform. So as you see, we try to plant about 200 trees annually. Those are through either volunteer events or just staff doing the replacements. We again prune around 2,000 trees annually. That number kind of varies. And then we have a goal of 80 to 100% replacement, although it would seem to make sense that 100% replacement of trees would be your goal. However, there are a lot of trees that were planted in spaces that cannot house trees any longer. So some of those removals that we perform, we physically cannot put a tree back in those areas because they're either too small or for whatever reason. And so this maintenance is really kind of showing a 3-year average, like I said, of what our 6 staff members do day in and day out throughout the year with the maintenance that they perform.
So now we're going to move into distribution of tree canopy. One way that we can explore the urban forest is by looking from a bird's eye view. From above, we can see the land is made up of different types of cover, including tree canopy, roads, sidewalks, buildings, bare soil, grass, and water. From this point of view, we can tell where property lines begin and end, but in many cases, tree canopy transcends these property lines. An analysis of high-resolution aerial imagery revealed that 2,528 of Napa's 11,760 total acres is tree canopy. The average canopy cover is 21.5%. In contrast, 39.5% of the land cover is impervious surfaces such as buildings, streets, sidewalks, and other hardscape. DRG worked with city staff to identify all areas where trees could potentially be planted, and that included areas of bare soil, grass, and vegetation. And additionally, areas where trees are not desired, places like ball fields, were excluded. Based on these areas, it was estimated that Napa has the potential to support 52.9% canopy cover. This estimate does not account for other planned uses for available planting space or the potential for existing trees to extend over hardscape or areas of hardscape being removed. Each of these factors has the potential to decrease that potential for canopy. Looking at tree canopy by block groups gives us more context about the distribution of canopy throughout the community. Canopy cover ranges from 4.7% in the block group that makes up the southern tip of Napa. So if you can see my cursor, that's this block group here. And then 94% is the highest canopy cover, and that's in block group in the east central Napa, this one right here. There is a trend where canopy cover is lowest in the southern part of the community and highest on the east and west edges of the community. We can look at the potential planting areas that we talked about a few slides ago with different lenses to help identify areas that are in the most need of tree canopy. In this case, stormwater mitigation is the priority, and the analysis considered distance to hardscape, distance to existing canopy, soil permeability, soil erosion, and slope. In the map and pie chart, the highest priority areas are indicated in red and tend to be located on the north and west edges of the community. But there are also many others, so low, very low, moderate, and high ratings. In this case, mitigating heat islands is the priority. This analysis takes land surface temperatures into consideration. Land surface temperatures were taken in the late afternoon on August 23rd in 2022 and July 9th in 2023. These temperature readings were averaged together to get the land surface temperature. The hottest areas are mostly located in the northern part of the community, and they are again indicated in red. Currently, these areas have higher amounts of impervious surfaces, which is likely contributing to the existing heat islands. The coolest parts of the community correspond with the Napa River watershed, even in areas that have lower canopy cover. So on this map, if you can recall, some of these areas that were in the southern part of the community had the lowest canopy cover, but here they're not the hottest, and that's likely because of the Napa River watershed. In this case, social equity is the priority. Block groups with residents that exhibit higher risk to the impacts of climate change based on social conditions such as higher poverty, lower percentage of vehicle access, or more crowded households are indicated in red, and those with lower risk are indicated in blue. Higher risk areas are spread out north to south throughout the middle of the community. Lower risk areas tend to be on the east and west edges of the community. To get a better sense of how canopy varies across the community, we can also look at city zoning. Among areas zoned for different uses, areas zoned combined residential currently have the highest canopy cover, ranging from approximately 25% to 43%. Areas zoned residential and office have canopy coverage above the community average. And again, that community average is 21.5%. Combined master plan currently has the lowest canopy cover at less than 3%. Napa has 36 drainage areas that correspond to creeks and rivers. The 36 drainage areas have an average of 21.5% canopy cover. In the map, the darker color of green, the more canopy cover. And in this canopy cover by hydrology analysis, we created a 50-foot riparian buffer to calculate the canopy cover along the rivers and streams. The average canopy cover is 30.3%. Trees and canopy along drainages intercept rain during storm events, which reduces and slows runoff and also can stabilize stream banks. They reduce the flow and volume of stormwater runoff that can cause erosion, pollute water bodies, and threaten aquatic life. But shading can also inhibit some types of undesirable vegetation and promote healthier bodies of water. Currently, public property has an average of 16.3% canopy cover and may be able to support up to 49.2% canopy cover. Private property currently has 23.9% canopy cover and might support canopy as high as 54.5%. The distribution of canopy shows that approximately 76.4% of Napa's overall canopy is on private property. Keep in mind that trees growing on public property can overhang private property and vice versa. Soon, we will ask you to share your perspective on the current urban forest, but before we get to that, we have a few informational slides. So we look forward to learning the values that you all share for the urban forest in the next portion of this evening's event. Please provide additional thoughts and feedback for the development of the plan at the next session and engagement. Ongoing engagement events will also be a collaboration between the City of Napa, Napa Resource Conservation District, and DRG. Stay tuned for these many upcoming events related to plan development by visiting the project landing page. And there will also be other avenues of letting you know what will be coming up. And as we mentioned, the online survey is officially open. You will be able to access the survey until August from the project landing page, I believe mid-August. Please take the survey and feel free to pass it on to friends, family, neighbors, and folks that were not able to attend this evening's meeting. And now I'm going to hand it over to Jeff again.
Yeah, thank you, Rachel. So at this point in the meeting, we're going to open up for any questions that anyone might have for either city staff or for Davie Resource Group. So if you do have any questions, please go ahead and come up to the podium. We'll get the microphones on, and we'll do our very best to answer any questions you might have. Following that, we do have an exercise. So once we get through the questions, as I stated before, we'll go ahead and stop the recording, as the recording will be available on the website to anybody that couldn't be here, as well as the survey as well. So if you wouldn't mind, just state your name, and then we'll go ahead and start with the questions.
Chris Benz, great presentation. My question is for Davie's Resource Group, and that is, how does Napa compare as far as Canopy to the other California cities you worked with? Thank you.
Thanks for that question. I don't know that we like to compare between cities, because even though it can be a good gauge to see where you are at, we don't want you to feel like you have to have more canopy cover because somebody else, another community has more. But I will say that you are on the higher end. And part of that is also location. So some of the communities that we're working in are in areas that just don't support trees as well as Napa does. Hopefully that answered your question.
Hi, I'm Ryan Honicke. I'm a commissioner and also an RCD board member. And I have a question for staff. I noticed in the presentation, whenever the map was shown, all those county donut holes were still included, even though this is supposed to be a 40-year plan. And if I recall correctly, LAFCO approved the annexation, or at least green-lighted the annexation of those white spots in the middle of the city boundaries. Is there any compelling reason why the Davie Resources Group did not include those county spaces in the urban tree canopy inventory?
Yeah, and Rachel and Tina, please jump in here. There was several goals in the inventory and as well as in the data collection, and they served varying different purposes. So we did, Davie Resource Group did an individual tree inventory, and they put that information into their software, iTree EcoTree resource. And so the trees that would fall under the jurisdiction of the city, that 34,000 number that was talked about, those trees were individually inventoried for their size, for their health, for many different factors. And so that was one aspect of the data. And then my understanding of, and Rachel and Tina, do jump in if I'm saying this wrong, but my understanding is for the canopy cover, the heat island, the other data points, they were taking a holistic look at the city boundaries. So when we looked at individual trees, we were highly focused on our maintenance and what we can do, as opposed to trees on private property that we couldn't actually work on. So when you see the dot map, you see the trees that really the city has the jurisdiction over. But my understanding of when we look at canopy and heat islands, we were looking at the city as a whole. And of course, we did that on purpose because we don't have the jurisdiction over those trees within those areas. Now, if those were annexed into the city, we could easily add to our inventory later if necessary.
Hi, Bruce Barge. I'm also an RCD board member, and want to thank the city and Davie Resource Group for this, what should be a really exciting initiative. This is really great. Thank you for the presentation. I have two questions. One is, if you could speak, I understand that this effort may be coordinated with American Canyon and the city of St. Helena. And so I would welcome some commentary about how this might play out over years to come. And then a second question is that I think part of a urban forestry plan that you spoke to a bit is disadvantaged communities that are, underrepresented in terms of trees, habitat, and so forth. And so I'd be interested in comments about how high a priority that is in terms of the development of the plan. Thank you.
Yeah, great questions. Regarding the first part of the question about neighboring agencies, we did start to look at grant opportunities in 2018 or 2019, 2020. And at that time, we did attempt to put in a plan for the grant in conjunction with American Canyon. The grant cycle went away during COVID in 2020 and came back towards the end of 21. And that period that they allowed us to turn in applications was so very short. In fact, it was 3 weeks. So we did not really have the time to go back and partner again with those other agencies and still make sure that we had a grant application that was in and competitive. We will have, like you said, a long-term plan, and partnering with other cities that have information or need information is absolutely something that can be done on a more global scale. And then regarding the second part of your question about disadvantaged communities, really two answers to that question. The CAL FIRE grant promotes doing work within any disadvantaged communities. Napa is special. It has smaller areas of disadvantaged communities. Some of those areas do overlie some of the work needs that were shown in some of the maps here. But any work that we do in those areas does not require a grant match. So we will definitely try to focus in on those areas where we can. And then the second part of that answer is, and in one of the slides Rachel showed, as we see, the majority of our tree canopy is really located on private property. So the city has obviously jurisdiction over certain amounts of the resource, but we know that the majority of the resource is really not something that we control. So we identified community engagement is really one of the biggest things that we can do in this project, and making sure that community members are aware that we really all play a part in this, because so much of that resource is really located on private property.
Hi, David Graves. My wife Lizzie and I live in Old Town, which is a pretty well-treed area. I have 3 comments. One is to build on what Bruce was saying. One of the issues it seems to be about, say, the area west of Highway 29, that's a disadvantaged community and is a tree desert, is that in order to tree that area, one would require the cooperation of the owners of a lot of the multifamily apartment units there. And not only is there a climate resilience issue, but there's also things like, well, how do you retrofit those buildings to make them zero carbon? I mean, there's a whole domino effect of private ownership of disadvantaged communities' housing resource. So I think that's a really interesting issue to try to understand. The other, I have 2 other comments. One is, I hope that the city, which is to say you guys and Public Works, will embark on innovation, testing of technologies like engineered soil or better sidewalk technologies. This is a result of tripping on a sidewalk where the trees have been removed, but the sidewalk had not been repaired. But that's not why I'm bringing this up. It's just that engineered soil is, for those of you who don't know, it's a means of mixing a soil combination that can both host trees and be mechanically sound for the sidewalk. And it sounds highfalutin, but it's actually pretty lowfalutin. And finally, since Davis was mentioned in the intro, I'm reminded that Davis has a shaded parking ordinance. In other words, parking lots are required to be shaded. And that in itself, I think, is a desirable goal. But the other part of that is if we're not going to have solar panels on our parking lots, say down at the big box area, a lot of the trees that were installed as part of the original project, and I'm not picking on them, but in general, if you drive around, you'll see dead or dying or very spindly, not very healthy trees. So I think if we could redevelop parking areas with better trees, more swales, better stormwater interception, that would be important to incorporate into the eventual urban forestry plan. And again, those are on private property, but a lot of those areas did come with use permits that mandated they were going to have trees, and now they don't. Thank you.
I will do my best to remember all that, but please, if I miss, come back up and re-ask. I think, and I agree with many of your statements. I think at this point, what's most key and critical for this project is to start to gather the input from the community on what are some goals and what are some things that the community would like to see out of this project. So I think my general answer to that question would be taking the survey. The survey has questions that allude to many of the things that you talked about in it. So taking the survey and promoting the survey and getting people to provide their feedback will be the most helpful thing for us to kind of try to direct our finite resources into where they can be most impactful to meet those goals. And if I did miss anything, please.
One more comment just about the survey.
Absolutely.
You can't submit the survey until you say something bad about trees. So that seems like you can't say, oh no, these aren't really problems. I love trees. That's not an accepted answer. You have to object to something, which seems kind of a defect in the design of the survey.
I understand. Point taken.
Hi, my name is Ingrid Schubert. I've lived in Napa since 2010 on the west side of 29 near West Park Elementary School, and witnessed probably dozens of large heritage type trees cut down on private property. And I'm just wondering, does Napa have, what is their code, or when do they need a permit to take a tree down if it's like a heritage tree? Is there such a thing? Or can anybody just cut down whatever they want?
Yeah. So speaking to our 12.45 code, there are two specific types of trees in which we talk about in that code. One is a significant tree, and a significant tree is a tree located on private property that has been nominated by the tree commission and then through resolution nominated by the council as a significant tree. And there are specifications about what work can be done on that tree without a permit from the city. And it's very minimal. It's basically you cannot reduce the canopy by more than 10%, and you cannot prune any limbs over 4 inches. So that's the significant tree. The protective native tree is also an ordinance that the city holds, and that speaks to certain native species, live oaks, valley oaks, redwoods of a certain size. And that ordinance speaks to trees that are located on lots that are 1 acre or larger. And those do require permits to perform work. Again, minimal work can be done without a permit, less than 10% reduction, 4 inches. But if you're going to do a removal, and then if removals are something that a permittee is seeking, there is a replacement quantity, i.e. meaning that the certain size of the tree requires a certain number of species replacement on that site there.
Okay,
So
thank you.
absolutely.
I wanted to ask you, what's engineered soil made of? Or I was a little late, so I missed.
You want to answer that?
Yeah, happy to answer that. It's a bit of a complicated answer, and I would like to take the opportunity to point out that the city is embarking on a project on Salvador to do some widening, and there's a significant number of mature oak trees on that project. And we have hired a consultant, and we are utilizing various different in that project, we're using bridging techniques. So we're making the sidewalk so robust that it doesn't need the support of the ground. It just bridges over those over those roots. Engineered soil is one of many types of construction methods to do when you're performing work in and around a tree. So engineered soil is a type of soil that doesn't necessarily require compaction, which would be bad for the roots. And it still provides the support to the sidewalk that your traditional base rock would provide. But there are many, many different aspects out there that you can do to create sidewalks and hardscape around trees and have less of an impact on them than your traditional construction methods. Any more questions?
I don't want to, if it's out of order, I would like to make one more comment, but if you want me to save it, I'll do that later.
I think we're okay. We'll go through the question and answer, and then we'll go ahead and stop the recording. And then we'll start with our feedback session.
Thank you, Jeff and Rachel. This is Jim Wilson, Napa grandfather and Napa Climate Now member. If you're a disadvantaged community or a child in today's world, you're going to bear the biggest brunt of the future. And so the city recognizes that with its newly adopted general plan with a climate and health element. And in that element, the city commits to providing leadership and services around achieving net zero climate pollution by or before 2030. And my question for you, Jeff and Rachel, is what's the city doing to provide services and leadership around accomplishing that goal by the way we put together this urban forest plan? For example, is there consideration, and have we used iTree modeling to calculate what kind of carbon loss will be irrecoverable if we're after a near-term net carbon sink, as you described earlier, the preservation and enhancement of our urban forest in pursuit of that preservation and enhancement of our net carbon sink? Thank you.
Yeah, Jim, I can jump in and kind of help answer that question. And the answer is yes, we will obviously take into consideration that resolution that was passed in 2023. I think similar to an answer that I gave earlier is that these decisions and the directions that we choose to go down after we collect all this information will have consequences on both sides of things. So this is something that we're definitely going to take into consideration. We have limited resources, but I think this is really all early on in that project development. The data that was shown to you tonight is very new, hot off the press. Staff has had less than a week to really digest all of the information, and we have not moved into that development plan yet. Part of this process is really to make sure that the community is involved in this process. And so starting off with this community event, learning from it and planning others to really gain that information is really the goal. So I don't want to get too far into the plan or even implementation of that plan. But absolutely, the points you brought up and our resolutions are going to be at the forefront of our thoughts as we start to develop this. And again, I will say, filling out that survey is really going to be a great next step to help guide us for future meetings, as well as guide us through the development of the plan.
Hi, I'm Susan. I get kind of upset because of the trees that we're planting. We're planting that Acer, I don't pronounce it right, Acer burgeronium. 4.7% of the trees. It's native to China. And also some years ago, John Hoffman wrote a book about some of his favorite street trees. And the crepe myrtle was one of his favorites. But when the city started planting those all over neighborhoods, he had told me personally that that had not been his intent. I would like to see the city use plant more native trees. Like the smaller trees for smaller spaces, like the red bud or the dogwood. And there's a lot of in between trees that are adapted to our climate and don't need to be watered as much. And basically, that's how I know that there's in between sizes trees. Many years ago, a forestry person told me that we should have one large tree like the Quercus lobata or the valley oak on every 5 acres to provide the kind of habitat that we needed. That's all. I just want to push for native plants, native trees that should be growing here. Black walnuts only grow in a few counties in the state, and our black walnuts are some that aren't found anyplace else in the world. And I think we need to start paying attention to what we still have. And it wouldn't bother me at all to have fruit trees, avocados, lemons in areas that could be gleaned for like the food bank. I think people would gather that food for themselves or be willing to gather it for the food bank. And that could be done in some of our park areas. Thank you.
Thank you. Absolutely. Our street tree planting list is part of this project and something that will be looked at throughout this process. So we will look at that and see if there are changes that should be made. And yes, the slide shows that we do have a little bit of a diversity issue. So I'm sure that will be addressing that will be part of our plan as well.
I appreciate the chance to, I don't know how I forgot to make this comment, but thank you for the opportunity very much. Thanks for everybody's forbearance. I've studied a lot of California urban forestry plans, and two that come to mind are Palo Alto's, which is very ambitious, and City of Sacramento, which is of course got a lot of trees, but also faces they had a lot of damage in the windstorm in February, and they also face the problem that it's warming up enough to make a lot of their trees not viable anymore in the climate of the near future and medium term. But one thing stood out to me in looking at their plans. Each of them has a municipal utility. They don't have the low bidder approach of PG&E's whackage on the overhead power distribution system. I understand, I mean, we've been through in our community a lot of issues related to safety of the electrical system in relation to coexisting with trees. But it strikes me that if you drive around Old Town or ride your bike around Old Town, excuse me, you see a lot of, are you kidding me? Whackage by what seems like chainsaw wielding tree butchers, not to put too fine a point on it. So I'm just hoping that the eventual plan has a means of making it so that our electrical transmission and distribution system can coexist with our urban forest. And I think that if anybody has a chance, both of those plans are online, the Palo Alto and Sacramento plans. And since Sacramento, I mean, if you ever go to Palo Alto and look up, you'll see that the trees are in a very different condition than ours are in relation to the electrical grid. So thanks again for your forbearance.
And then just a short answer on that question. We have spent a lot of effort trying to communicate with PG&E on their projects. And although it's not at a place that I would necessarily like to see it at this point, we have made progress with them, and we hope to continue to make further progress, and we hope that this project helps us do that as well. Okay, well, with that, if there isn't any more questions, I will go ahead and let Tina and Rachel go. Again, this presentation was recorded and will be put up on the website for anyone that would like to see it, as well as a link to the survey. And then we'll move on to kind of the second and shorter portion of the presentation tonight, where it's just an exercise for us to try to gain more information from those attending. I will also point out that there was a sign-in sheet that we requested your name and email. If you could please sign that either on your way out, or if you have not already. We'll help to utilize that as any mailers that we create. If you go ahead and put your email down, we will provide that information. So I will say thank you very much to Rachel and to Tina, and we'll look forward to our next meeting, and then we can I can quickly introduce our next exercises, and we can get started with that.
Thank you all.